Welcome to the No Camps podcast. I'm Sonny G.
I am Akash.
I'm Jason, and here on the No Camps podcast, we talk about movies, television, and a variety of other fun topics. But today we're talking about Westworld Season 2, Episode 8, Kiksuya. I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced.
Better than I can pronounce it.
Kiksuya. So I'm going to give my reaction first, man. I loved this episode. I really love this episode. I think it's my favorite this season. And just kept you interested and engaged the whole way. And I wasn't interested in seeing this at all. Like, knowing that this was about the Ghost Nation, I wasn't too excited. And I was kind of worried that they would, fall back on some old tropes. But I think they did it really beautifully, and they shot it really well. And it was basically an episode of a guy who narrated the whole movie. It was like subtitled the whole movie. And it was amazing. Like, you kind of forgot about it, and you got lost in the story. So I absolutely loved this episode.
Jason, what was the subtitle or the episode description?
It was Makante ki yu hayaye, which means nice. Take my heart when you go. I pronounced that flawlessly. It's a flawless pronunciation.
That was amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, it's take my heart when you go. That's what it means.
I also loved this episode, but I think for maybe somewhat different reasons. This was just an emotional episode. I mean, this is kind of like what we expect from the best of Westworld to be, and it delivered on those notes, and it gave us a different experience rather than just give us answers. It gave us answers in a very unique way, and we got to follow a journey through a character that we really haven't seen much of, who's been a complete mystery, and it provides such a unique perspective that I was just fully engaged in. We were talking a little bit before the podcast, and I didn't look away from the screen once. Like, I didn't even touch my phone. This is just so captivating and intriguing. I think this is one of those defining episodes for this series, and I think will be talked about by everyone, right?
Yeah. No, I squarely sit with y'all on this. This is the kind of Westworld that I've been waiting for. So much so that it's beyond like Westworld storytelling. It almost feels like a different show, and so on that level, it was awesome. And then on the another level, we just get so much lore behind the Ghost Nation, and how it fits in with the greater Westworld lore, that I think it's setting up some really interesting potential interactions and further plot developments that are just super captivating and do so much reinforcement of the universe they've already created.
And I gotta say, the guy who plays our main character, Aki, his name is Zach McClarnon. It was on McClarnon, sorry. Dude, he did a great job. I thought he was great, and whoever played his wife was really good. Like, again, they just, like we saw with Musashi and Akane earlier, they just found this pair that just destroyed the job. I mean, they did a great job, like emoting it and everything. I thought it was fantastic. And halfway through this episode, I was so interested. I was upset. I was like, damn, I wish we had this earlier. I'm kind of upset that it's taking into episode 8 to explore this side of Westworld. But then again, we wouldn't have gotten this like kind of a masterpiece of an episode for me. I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, seeing this, are you glad they kind of held off and kind of told the story in this way, or do you wish that they had been kind of part of the journey with us?
I had similar frustrations. I'm still trying to see where the first 3 episodes tie in. I for the life of me, like, cannot understand. I mean, besides the basic plot points that they've set up on this episodes, what do those 3 episodes really mean? Like, how do you have this quality of an episode and then have that to start the season off is what I don't understand. But again, we are not done with the season, but I'm having a real time, and I want to bounce this off you guys. I'm having a hard time to understand what they presented in the first 3 episodes and how that will pay off as we go forward. Because besides just being very boring, like like setting the story. Like I don't know what else those episodes really served as.
Okay, so I think the reason those 3 episodes exist is purely as a way of manipulating with time, so that they can give us something to look forward to and something to like have in the back of our heads as we're watching these characters move through the story. But after this episode, I think, I mean, ideally they'll come out with some big twist of how to reconcile what we know happens and where we think characters' minds are at about what they need to do and what they'll be likely to accomplish. But that's maybe wishful thinking.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't pay it off, I would prefer a 7-episode season rather than a 10-episode with 3 filler shitty episodes. Like, don't give me that next season.
A lot of it was just to establish Dolores too, and it just didn't feel right. And maybe they kind of went that route in the setting early because it was familiar. It kind of felt more like Westworld, and it kind of, if they kicked it off with this kind of episode, or in Shogun World, there'd be a little jarring. Maybe it was just kind of their way to ease into this season, and we're really liking the direction the season's going. So we kind of like the momentum, but we didn't like kind of the start of it. And maybe that's just to
your point. Do we need 3 episodes to show the same Dolores? No. There's absolutely no growth. This is Dolores, this is Dolores, this is Dolores, and that is a flat plane and no like growth at all, right?
Yeah.
So it's really frustrating to have 3 episodes of just shitty Dolores.
Yeah. I remember after watching this, my knee-jerk reaction was that, God damn, yeah, I would have much preferred an elongated story like this, intercut with the rest of the season to what we saw from Dolores. But to Jason's point, it's probably much more rewarding now that like we've been deprived of it. And getting this incredibly playful relief from like the doldrum of the Westworld that we've seen, like however new it is this season, like it's still pretty familiar. Something this foreign is just, I think, really appealing because of how foreign it is. But going back to what you said earlier, Jason, the actor, he did a phenomenal job, even more so because his character is like the most recognizable from the Ghost Nation and has always seemed the most like tyrannous and like just horrible, right, and violent. So it's getting to see this other side of him. It's jarring in and of itself, right? But it just shows that his range, right? Like this character we thought we knew everything about, we absolutely knew nothing about.
It's interesting also that he's just an extreme juxtaposition to the Man in Black, to where like they kind of set up Maeve versus Dolores. You now know in this episode that this guy is searching for somewhat of the same truth that William is, or trying to play this game that the Deathbringer set up, but he is just a kinder, more like a kinder person, right, compared to William. So it's a nice little juxtaposition that they have for these. Yeah. It's almost like a compass where like Dolores is north, Maeve is south. He's east and west.
Yeah,
in Westworld.
Dude, totally agree.
Yeah,
totally agree.
Really good point.
But I gotta say too, I don't know if you noticed the pre scenes, the whatever they show, the flashbacks. Again, they did a great job. They're doing the whole no words and everything. It was really cool.
I love it.
But yeah, that was him. That was him with Angela when they met with
Logan. Introducing to the host. I didn't realize that until the second time I saw those previews, because I remember thinking he looked familiar. But
I'm sorry, say that again.
Remember when Logan has that meeting with Angela and that other host, and he goes through the demo. That's him, and they kind of show that. You remember we even said he looked familiar when we saw that.
Yes.
So now it's so beautiful, that little moment. Because now when he sees Logan later in the episode, they already met. They already saw each other. He recognizes Logan, which is
from a previous life. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
And I think what's crazier is that I'm pretty sure up until that point we have not seen him without face paint, right? So the fact that he was familiar is just like a very obvious nod that we didn't pick up on. That he was the same person, and we just kind of felt it all along. It's crazy.
Amazing. All right. So let's get into it, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. So we open with the Man in Black just crawling, completely injured, and basically before he dies, he's met by a Ghost Nation member. As we learned, his name is Akichita. Is that how we decided his name is pronounced? Akichita.
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah, okay.
He goes by Aki, so we're gonna call him Aki. Sorry, so Aki, and he saves the man in black and tells him that he remembers him. He brings him to his camp, where we see Maeve's daughter. We see basically memories of Maeve and her daughter at the cabin playing with dolls, and Maeve finds a stone with a maze written in blood on it, and her daughter says that some ghost gave it to her. We're back at Delos headquarters, and we see Lee bring Maeve. Her body's completely mangled and trying to get her body repaired. And he basically screams and exposes the fact just to try to get them to fix her, that she can control other hosts. And this sparks a lot of interest around the Delos headquarters. Then we see Aki come to talk with Maeve's daughter. And he says that he can remember his past lives just like her. And he begins his story of his past life, which is going to be the main arc of our episode. I was already just completely entranced, like right here. I don't know. They did the camp so well. You know, they just for some reason they felt more real. The Ghost Nation felt more real in this episode than ever really before. They just felt like fodder just for storylines before. And now it's amazing how like just in already one scene, I felt like there was already like a culture behind them, you know?
Mm.
Yeah, it was really nice. I mean, they've always been like the enemy in the distance and not really characterized that much before now, right?
Yeah.
I thought they did a really good job of introducing all of these characters, and I'm not sure how they did it so well, but like you already sympathize with them so quickly, and you're able to like relate to them so quickly just with a number of scenes, you know? Beautifully done, I thought.
All right, so like I said, Aki's just going to beginning his story, and we see him waking up with his wife in their teepee, and then we see their village, and we hear him narrating throughout the whole story, and he's telling us how easy and simple his life was. Then he suddenly found something that, quote, changed all of our lives. We basically see him stumble upon the aftermath of Dolores killing the town and killing Arnold back before the park opened up. Aki sees Arnold and walks right into the saloon behind him and finds the maze. So at the village, Aki is basically drawing the maze everywhere. He's going crazy. The tribe thinks that he's going crazy. And he says that he has heard a new voice in his head. But before he could understand that voice, these people took everything away from him. We see the park reprogram him to be the savage native that we know him later, or I guess later in the storyline, as we know him in previous episodes and seasons. And we basically just see him slaughtering a bunch of white people. I think it's important to note that, you know, in the beginning when we see these two interact, they tell that tagline from the episode, "Take my heart when you go," and the response is, "Take mine in its place." So that was just kind of a nice little, a beautiful touch, but it's kind of part of their storyline as we move forward. Oh, also, just as a side note too, I don't know if you guys noticed. Did you guys notice when Aki picks up the maze in the saloon, there's a fly is flying on his hands?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's up with the fly? I know we kind of talked about it before, but what's up with what do you think the fly really means?
In the first season, the fly landed on beings that weren't woke or at some threshold. Maybe it's a signal of bugginess or something like that, right? So when they don't react to it, we can tell that they are pretty much asleep in some sense. Because I think it's at the end of episode 1 that Dolores swats the thing on her neck, right?
Right.
So yeah, maybe it just means that as he's picking it up, he's not woke yet. But this is maybe that's like that plus the maze is the visual way of telling us, like, all right, this is the new beginning for him.
Right.
Interesting. I also found it funny too when he got reprogrammed. You know, he's kind of like we see those scenes of him roaming the countryside with his other Ghost Nation men, and they're just like reaving basically. And we hear him narrate. He says that, you know, we had no masters, and they would conquer anyone that they came across. So like they were looking for enemies. And that like reminded me of Dolores actually, like at that stage, you know, because I felt like this is a story of him kind of waking up, and it's almost like at this point in time, this is like where Dolores is stuck. You know, she's free. She has no directive. She has no narrative, and her response to that is just like to pillage. And I don't know. Did you guys? Is that kind of a weird comparison?
Wasn't that program though? He was meant to do that. Like his aggression was turned up just so he's constantly like
Yeah, yeah.
created as like a threat in the park for people to go like chase after. Like I thought that was done purposefully. Are you trying to get at say like that was his inner like like personal will doing that, or what are you trying to get at? I don't follow.
Well, it's like that's what he says. His life was at that time, right? It was like he didn't have anywhere to go. He basically didn't have a life that he had to be committed to in this new directive, which was programmed for him.
Mhm.
But I don't know. It just seemed like a weird parallel. Like to me, it's just like almost signifying that like Dolores still is not fully like conscious. Like really being conscious is being aware and caring of other hosts. And Dolores is just kind of stuck in this mode where, she's kind of this like ravenous.
I think I slightly disagree if I understand what you're saying. I mean, I think Dolores' motive is to free the host. She wants to have. I mean, I don't know what what is it? The place there, the Valley Beyond.
Valley Beyond.
I mean, that's her motive. I don't think she's directionless at all. Like, if anything, we know that she wants to free the host. They destroy the cradle so they can actually have a freedom in a sense. I don't think there's any. I don't think she's like directionless as maybe we might have thought she was episodes 1 through 3.
Yeah, I'm going to pile it on. I think there's no comparison to be made there, just because I think his is purely scripted, right? Like him just being part of Ghost Nation is just something that he has to do. So I think Dolores' violence doesn't compare to it because I can see why you could say that yes, she might be on a script, right? Because she's exhibiting similar behavior, but I don't think she is, right?
Yeah. Well, whatever. All right. I mean, yeah. Okay.
Agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree. I don't think I'm getting my point.
Also, terrible theory, Jason. My bad.
That's right.
Boo.
All right. So then we see a key, basically the aftermath of a battle, and just walks into a desert, and that's when he stumbles across Logan, and he sees that Logan's kind of going crazy in the desert, just alone, and Logan tells Aki that this is, quote, "This is the wrong world." Aki just gives him a blanket, tells him his people will come, and he returns to the village where he first was, and under this new persona, this new program persona that he has. He sees his old wife, who doesn't recognize him, and then tells Maeve's daughter, we see back at the camp, tells Maeve's daughter that he can't stop searching for a way to reach his old life.
I thought we were gonna see like the actual reason behind Logan's death here, and it was gonna open up another mystery box for us or something. So I thought that'd be interesting. Or Logan was left out in Westworld, never to be found, and he's assimilated to the Ghost Nation. It's pulling some sort of string. I don't know. My mind just started going down some crazy.
Yeah, but we saw him in the future. We already saw him after this. Yeah, because this is presumably after Will let him go, right at the end of season 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that I have a lot to say about these couple moments.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's interesting is he says he starts hearing a new voice, which I guess just means it's like a bug in the code, or it's a part of what Arnold left in all of the hosts, and only some of them get to be aware of it or something, or like come to awareness of it.
Well, it seems like the original cast, and he's part of that original cast. It seems like something with this original crew that, they have a deeper connection to Arnold, or they had a kind of a awakening with Arnold early on.
Yeah, because it seems there's an element of that, right, where it's maybe just some bug or some implant. But you also hear the lab techs say that when they wipe his identity to become the Ghost Nation leader, that they don't have time to delete his shit because they just need to come up with a new narrative. So they're just going to patch over it or whatever and throw him out because the park is about to open, right? Which is them telling us, he's going to retain all of his memories. So if there's something wrong with his code that's going to let him see them, then that's just going to be like the next step of his awakeness, right? Or journey towards awakeness. So I thought
going, like, I just want to your earlier comment. I feel like that is the hardest thing for the show to explain to the viewers is this voice that they're hearing, and
Yeah.
how to justify what that voice is and where it's coming from. I think
Yeah.
narratively and as a story, it's going to be the hardest thing to sell the audience on. I'm already like thinking about what it could be and what is the most logical, like not like some crazy made up reason, you know, that they just pull out of their ass. But
Yeah, that's
it's gonna be
definitely one
very
of the
interesting.
deepest questions
Exactly.
of West.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the longest threads that'll carry through all the seasons. Yeah. Is that underlying question?
What
Yeah,
is the
but
voice?
well, yeah, exactly. Where does the voice come from? Who
What
puts
is
it
it?
there?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, same thing with like Ford and Arnold's relationship, right? Like whatever that looked like and whatever led, you know, Ford to creating a Bernard. I think it's just going to be one of those long-term questions
Or
that
is it
we
the
may never
nature
get a
of the
clear answer
code
to.
to through so many iterations of life to eventually become like a sentient being, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If it wasn't done with some intention, and even if it was done with an intention, like to some degree answering how, right? Like
Right.
that. Yeah. We may never get answers to stuff like that. Yeah. So even after he gets his new identity, he says he can feel the difference between the hosts and the guests, like the people he's not supposed to kill, which, you know, signals to me, yeah, he somehow is able to keep some of that awareness, maybe because he's still on an alpha version of the code. And then he gets further triggered when he runs into Logan, with Logan telling him this is the wrong world, right? And then gets further triggered again when he sees his previous wife and starts remembering her and remembering their lifetimes with her. So I thought it was just really nice how they laid out this progression of like moment after moment after moment that even Ford later says like he created him to be curious. You know, and to read meaning into their world. So for him to like, they're literally showing us step by step how someone can reason through like their own self-awareness, right? At least in the context of the park.
It's like an onion, just so many layers, like layer after layer, right?
Yeah.
Beautifully done.
Yeah. And I think that's where I'm caught up with where you are, Jason.
Yeah. Well, and also I just liked, you know, at this point he says, you know, talking about Logan, he's like, oh, he was obviously, you know, gone crazy from the sun. He goes, but his words cracked something in me. And I don't, man, his lines and just the narration, the way they told the story, just seems so authentic. You know, I don't know. It seemed like it was this is like a Native American tale that we're listening to, and it was just so on point. And stuff like that, like they nail the dialogue and they just nail the styles so well. And
it's like every word was picked perfectly. Like not too much was said, and not like they didn't leave out too much as well. You know, it's like they wrote it so well.
It has that particular poetry that you know you hear. It's like, oh, it was great. Okay, well then we see Aki leaving the aftermath of another battle. And he starts to come to the realization that he wasn't living a true life, and he begins the search for his old wife, Koha. That's her name. He keeps riding until he finds a door, basically reassuring to himself that he was indeed, this is the wrong world. He sneaks back into his village and steals his wife, Koha, who doesn't recognize who he is again, so he literally has to steal her away. He tells her the words that they tell each other, you know, take my heart when you go, take mine in its place. And she suddenly remembers him. And he tells her that he found a way out of the park and he wants to go and show her. But when he does, the door is suddenly gone.
They vow to pause real quick. I want to ask you guys something. When they initially showed the door that he sees, did you guys pause at all? And what did you guys see? Like what was being displayed to us there? Just some random machinery?
It's hard to tell.
Yeah, like they were stacking pods of some kind, you know?
To me, it looked like subway tunnels, but I could be wrong too. I'm not sure. That could be like the main train station or the main door into like maybe some of the storage areas of the park or something. Or it could be like a semi-subway station. Okay. But it's hard to tell. Like the CG was good, but it's like exactly hard. It's all futuristic looking, right? So it could be anything.
Right. Okay, I just wanted to ask you guys. Sorry, just go ahead.
Yeah. Well, when they notice when he notices the door is gone, they basically vow to each other that they're going to find it together. And as they're looking for the door, Koha eventually gets taken by the park people. Yeah. Okay. So actually, to your point, Sonny, or to Gosh, so he found the door and then he couldn't find the door. So at this point, I'm wondering, like, so what the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
What did you guys think? Did you guys think he didn't find the door? Do you think it was like a vision? Do you think Ford was fucking with him somehow? Like, what did you? Do you think he went back to the wrong place? They shot it from different angles, so it was hard
Yeah.
to see if he was in the same locale or not.
How do you
To
hide
me,
that? You
to
know?
me, it didn't look like it was in the same place, but I feel like that's just maybe a gaff. Like I think it's supposed to be implied that he knew where to go and couldn't see it. Maybe because like of a update to his code, or maybe because he's with her and she hasn't seen it, and she knows not to see it subconsciously, and maybe like that means that he can't see it or something. It's I don't know. It's very hard to tell.
Agreed. Yeah, it's very hard to understand what they were going for there.
Yeah. I mean, but I think we can kind of rule out that they did a massive. I mean, I feel like we almost can't, but probably reasonably could rule out that they did some massive geological shift, right? And like actually patched that hole up or something like that.
That's what I'm wondering.
We've seen big ass machines, right? So
Right.
it seems like it's possible, but like,
Yeah, and that's a good theory. But I mean, as the episode was going on, I was rationalizing to myself, like maybe before they could actually get to the location, she was captured. So his directive changed then to go try to find her, and he didn't go because he's seen the door. Like, and if he can't take her to the door, there's no point to go there again, right?
yeah.
So I assume that they got caught, or she got caught before they were able to get to that scenic overlook that shows you the door or whatever.
I was also wondering if they're messing with time again. You know, it's just like different timelines. So they actually in the same place, but it's different. Is he retelling? Is he having trouble retelling the story in the right chronological order?
Right.
I don't know.
That's an interesting theory.
But I like what he says there too. Like when he's telling Koha that they can go somewhere else, he goes, "This is somewhere our memories will be safe." You know, just again like the poetry behind the dialogue. Like I love that kind of stuff. Somewhere our memories will be safe. Like in his, as we learn in his stories, that's all he cares about, the memory of his wife. He doesn't want to die because he doesn't want to lose his memories. It's really, really, really cool.
And it's such a sympathetic sentiment, right? Like it would suck to keep getting your memory wiped over every single day, and like try to re-understand who you are. And like I don't know, it's something that I think every viewer can sympathize, and it has such an emotional impact. This episode, I think that's why it just hits home so well.
Yeah.
All right, well, then we see Aki going back to the village to get Koha again, to go steal her away again after she was taken. And he discovers that she was replaced by another host. It's no longer Koha. He tells Maeve's daughter that he had to make the journey to find her. He goes and he searches the whole park, and we suddenly see him just crawling, injured. And Maeve's daughter swoops in and gives him water and basically saves him. And it kind of Aki expresses his huge gratitude for that. He says here, he looks to Maeve's daughter, who she doesn't have a name. So I looked it up. Her name's just Maeve's daughter. Her character is Maeve's daughter.
Yeah.
He says like you know the journey I speak of. And he's just somehow he already knows at this point it's death, right? And he's basically iterating with her daughter, like that death is the only place. Is that what he was saying there?
It was unclear to me too. What he meant.
Because he doesn't die right away. He doesn't come to that realization right away. Like not right at this point. At this point, he's still like searching, but he says that. So I don't know. I was curious what he was saying there.
Yeah, I don't know what journey he's speaking of. I mean, like, what journey did Maeve go on? Maybe he meant like to the pit, or
the journey of being woke.
Yeah, but it didn't really feel like that, because I feel like he had already taken most of his journey, up to that point in the story.
Yeah, I don't know. That just puzzled me.
Yeah, same.
Then he goes back to his village, where he sees other hosts that are noticing changes and replacement of people around the tribe. He has a conversation with another host, one of the other hosts, and he realizes then that he basically has to die in order to go see Koha again. So now we see him down in the Delos lab, and the technicians realize that he's been roaming the park for a decade, or up to a decade, without any type of update. and which basically means he hasn't died in a decade. He's been out there surviving, and their technicians are just ordered to just update him, return him to the park. Don't tell anybody this happened. So while he's getting, quote, updated, he just gets up and walks around the Delos headquarters, and he finds Koha in the storage with all the other decommissioned hosts. He returns back to the village, talks to the host that he talked to before he left, and said that there's no getting our people back, and he knows how to close one door and open another, one that will keep us from their reach. And he says that everyone's bound together, both the living and the damned.
I have a nitpick right there.
What was it?
In the lab, what was going on? Like, was he shut down? Was he faking? If he was, how were they not aware? If they're updating him, how was he able to just get up and move around? Why is there no one in the hallway? How did he get down all the way without being seen? Like, all of that was very it kind of pulled me out for a second, but it was so intriguing to see what he was gonna find down there. I didn't care as much, but I don't know. This show's so detailed. Like, come on.
No, I agree.
Oversights are annoying.
Yeah, he's so distinct that it feels almost ridiculous that he could have gotten down there. I can excuse him faking it because, Maeve can fake it, right? So, he can probably fake it. He's just not as overt. And since he's just telling a story, they're not going to show us all those little bits and pieces.
Right.
But it was kind of like Maeve, right? She had a similar journey in season 1 when she kind of woke up. Mm-hmm. Remember, she was down there and she woke up when she was in sleep mode. And she was walking around and just kind of discovered all the craziness that all this was fake. Yeah. So it was kind of that similar. I think that's what they were really trying to do with the scene. Nitpicks aside, they're just like, all right, look, he's going to take this similar walk through Delos and come to that realization at the end.
And also, I think it's important to know that I think we know of only 3 hosts who were in that alpha state. So it's Aki, Dolores, and Angela, right?
Yeah, I think Teddy might have been too.
Clementine.
And Clementine.
And you said Angela?
Are you sure though?
Yeah.
Because we've seen Dolores in the real world, we've seen Aki in the real world, and we've seen Angela in the real world. I'm talking these are probably the first 3 ever created.
We saw Clementine in that first demonstration with Logan. She was playing the piano.
Right. Yeah, that, and then there was also, there was the guy at the Confederado, right? He was there at that demonstration. But then there were also scenes of Arnold in front of the church before he died. And you see the, what's the name of the woman that rolls with?
Yeah.
Armistice, right?
Pre-tattooed, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Pre-tatted up and stuff, yeah. Those are the only ones I remember. But they're a good deal, at least around before the park opened. But for sure, Angela and Dolores are the 2 OG ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They were proof of concepts before the park was even open.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry. We can move on then.
Well, actually, no. So sorry. I didn't realize. I want to chime in. My bad.
Go. Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple things I really liked about the scene. One, we get Ben Foster for 3 seconds.
We do.
Yeah, Ben Foster is the one from 3:10 to Yuma,
no,
right?
I know who he is. I completely missed him. Oh my
yeah,
God.
No, he's Ake is rolling through town and talking about how he's going to these places where there's enemies all around him. Mm-hmm. There are people eyeing him, and sitting on the bench, I'm almost 100% certain is just Ben Foster, which I was disappointed to not see him later in the episode, but I thought it was just a cool little throwaway because he's so good in Westerns, right?
Oh, he's amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah. So, so I thought that was interesting. Then, I really like when he goes back to his original home and he's talking to the other host who's noticing these changes. Mm-hmm. She then confirms, we talk about them. They're like part of the legend that these Native Americans carry around, right? So it's so interesting that the Ghost Nation and these Native Americans who already are stereotyped to have an awareness of the world and a deeper understanding with natural reality, to also coincidentally happen to have a much deeper connection with the actual reality of the park, right? And even if only maybe he can see it for what it is, they at least have deified this otherworldly aspect of the park, which is just so interesting.
Yeah, they always get
Um,
personified with the mysticism
Yeah.
so quickly
yeah,
with every kind of
and
storytelling, you know?
considering how fucking sloppy they are, like they wouldn't. How would they not have known that like Ake was around when they picked up his wife? You know,
Right.
not to mention he kind of runs at them and they just like no periffs vision, right? So it's no wonder that they've been spotted, that dolls have been made about them, that they've been drawn, and that these Native Americans like semi worship and semi fear them.
Well,
So I thought it was just a nice throwback to them.
it's also them, right? Or it's also him. He's a big part of that. He's a huge reason for that. You know, as we learn later, he like dedicates his life to talking about like spreading the maze and this idea. He kind of like wakens up the Ghost Nation. Hey, do you guys remember when what timeline Maeve got the doll from the Ghost Nation in season 1? Was that like early on, or was that more present time, or closer to present time? Because Aki makes it really clear that this is his mission, right? That he's going to spread.
It's not really clear, right? I don't know what kind of hints or like markers they give us to differentiate what time. I don't even know if it's important when it happens.
But do we know that she gets it from the Ghost Nation?
Yeah, it was the Ghost Nation was like piling out of the town. It was either her or Delore. I'm pretty sure it was Maeve. And then this little girl has a doll and she just gives it to Maeve.
Oh, I see.
And it looks like one of the lab techs
Right.
in their gear, right?
It's one of the Native American girls. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just saying
No,
the
I'm
point
not
that
sure.
they're like deifying
Yeah.
this, and it's like
No, I mean,
grows
so
over time, right?
right. So we know it's 10 years after the opening of the park, roughly,
Mhm.
that he wakes up and learns about this. So it's only after that point that he makes it his mission to like
Right.
spread the message, right? But even up to that point, we know that the other Native Americans are already aware of them or they.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, they could have made dolls up until that point, but he mentions later like our numbers were growing. I was sharing this with more people, so like it just gets more likely as time passes that Maeve got that doll in the later days.
So he's like the basic catalyst for like everything. I mean, he was a Maeve before Maeve, essentially, like trying to wake everyone up.
But like a silent Maeve,
Yeah.
because I guess like his narrative kept him too segregated away from the rest of the park. Because like I'm sure like even if he was to roll into town, he'd probably get shot before he got a chance to speak to anyone reasonable about anything, right?
Yeah.
So it's like almost like their nation was allowed to get awoken or wake themselves up, but like couldn't really do anything about it because they were just almost outcasts in their fake world.
Well, what's funny is it seems like repetition and the broken repetition is what really woke a lot of the hosts up. And he didn't really have much of a loop, you know, like from what we saw, there wasn't a whole lot that would go off every day, you know, like, you know, so it's interesting that he found his path to consciousness seemed a lot quicker than, or maybe it isn't quick, but you know what I mean? Like Dolores, it took her getting killed and raped and by different people and different timelines for her to like realize something was up.
Yeah, so you bring up a good point because we were talking about deeper questions earlier, and I think possibly another one to add to the list is what is the actual significance of the maze? Like we understand, and again, maybe this is because I haven't seen first season in a while. Like we know the maze generally what it represents, but like is there something more significant to it? Because it seems that the act of seeing it is the catalyst event for him.
Right.
So it's like I have to wonder like what is there some deeper significance to the maze, like maybe built into their own programming?
Yeah, like conceptually, it's like it allows a code to compile in a certain way for them to wake up or something. Some sort
Maybe,
of
right.
pathway, some sort of code path. I don't know. It doesn't.
Or like right, it's just enough of a bug for
Right.
them to open that door.
Right.
Should they choose to walk through it, right?
Right.
Maybe it's like the artificial nature of like an actual thing like that, which couldn't. I mean, not really exist. Like, who would have designed something like that? Or or it could be something deeper. Like Arnold put in a little code. When you see this QR code, your shit starts frying, right?
Yeah, and conceptually, you know, they mentioned that it took him 10 years to come back into the lab. But like, as a host, it must be really like odd to see no one aging around you. You're living the same village for 10 years, and a kid is still a kid always. That child. Maeve's child is always a child, and they've been around for years and years and years. But like, you know, they implant memories and they have certain memories of them being children and now they're adults, but like they're just like broken parts of this code where like they're still not fully human in that sense where they can't like time doesn't seem to be like something that they can comprehend almost.
No, I think it's they're on loops. So they only ever live maybe like a month at a time, right?
Oh, that's right.
Before they get reset.
So it must have been a mind fuck if you live for 10 years and he's like,
yeah,
wow, he's like
that's if there's a plot hole, it's that one, right? Like that somehow everyone in the park could have died, within a reasonable time span to have their loop reset. Right. And yet no one had him on their radar for not having died for 9+ years, right? There's a plot hole right there. But but other than that, yeah.
No, but Akash is saying like how the hosts don't recognize that things aren't like he hasn't recognized that. Oh, I haven't had a haircut in 9 years. Like,
well, that okay, I see. Oh well, I'm sure that just contributes to him becoming more aware of how.
I'm assuming he's able. Like, I mean, it's not explicitly told to us, but I mean, I'm sure he's noticed some of that, and that's raised the questions and allowed him to get to that mental state where he is now. Right.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Cool. Well, getting back to it, we I see a really quick scene here with Lee, who passionately apologizes to Maeve, who's still mangled on the operating table. Mm-hmm. And a technician comes in and says that her future is up to the decision of Charlotte Hale. And then we go back to Aki, who's telling Maeve's daughter that he dedicated his life to sharing the maze symbol. And we see one of his men start to draw the symbol on the ground, like seemingly crazily. And asks Aki to basically skin him alive.
Scalp him.
Scalp him. Sorry, not skin him. Sorry, scalp him. It was kind of skinny, right? Well, you scalp him alive.
Yeah. To tattoo the maze, right?
Right, yeah. So that's kind of where we see the maze symbol coming. Then he confesses to Maeve's daughter that he was trying to warn her. And we start to see those flashbacks of Maeve and her daughter in the cabin getting raided by the Ghost Nation, and we see Aki, who was the one who was walking across the windows, and we see Maeve walk out with her gun to see the maze pattern drawn right in her front yard outside of her cabin. Then we see Maeve tucking in her daughter and promising to keep her safe. And then we see the flashbacks of them in the cabin, but this time it's the man in black who comes in. And as we see the familiar scene with the man in black coming in and killing her and the daughter, we hear Aki narrating and saying, this was a promise that you could never keep. I started getting this was an interesting little sequence. Mm-hmm. Because it starts to imply a little bit more behind Maeve's daughter in the scene, right?
Go on.
Or did you kind of pick up any implications beyond this? Because he's talking to Maeve's daughter like it's Maeve's daughter.
So I think what he does is he speaks to Maeve's daughter in English, but he speaks to Maeve in Lakota.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was here where he started to, at least for me, started to recognize the difference, because he starts saying you. He starts saying you in this scene.
And it's when he says that I suspected he was talking to Maeve. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So that's what he alludes to, like, you remember past lives, or you remember, the different lives you lived as well too.
Yeah, it seemed like a weird question to ask the little girl.
Right.
But it makes sense now.
It's a great misdirect.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Dude, I mean, that scene with Lee and Maeve, I thought was great.
Yeah,
like,
really heartfelt.
It turned around on his character. Like, right. I really like him.
Yeah.
When Jason and I were watching the first season, I kept looking at him every time Lee would talk, because he makes that duck face whenever he talks, and it's so obnoxious.
Yeah. A relentless fucking experience.
Yeah. Exactly. So to see him come around like this, and despite how Maeve has kind of treated him like shit, even after like she was getting everything she wanted, to see him come around,
deservedly.
That was really nice.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's like a deservedly, in the sense that you're a human, so you're a part of my oppression, and then there's like his personal responsibility over her oppression, which wasn't that great, right? Yeah. So eventually she warmed up to him, but it's nice to see that he has like come around completely, it seems, at least in terms of his perspective on hosts and their own like right to live, even,
Right.
Yeah, it's a nice moment.
Mm-hmm. I also thought it was nice to see. We now get to understand the meaning of the maze and why it's under some of the Native Americans' heads. So again, like more looking inward into the past of the story and what's already been mentioned through like really good callbacks to only make the universe richer. Right now we know like this is the kind of religion that they've had, but we know why how they got it, and we know why they all have it and how it got there, right? Which it definitely explains how people didn't notice it was there.
So are we to assume that these Native Americans, once they get scalped, the park mechanics or whatever they're called, they just reattach the scalp without? I mean, no one ever took a look again.
Yeah.
Maybe it heals back. I don't. It's still unclear, like to what level organic matter is involved in their host anatomy. You know.
Yeah.
But maybe they never looked. I guess maybe another plot hole there.
I was thinking the same thing, Akash, because it's like, okay, so that guy he scalped his buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, buddy's going to presumably die, so they're going to come and get him, and somebody's going to look at the head and be like, okay, well, there's a maze here.
Yeah.
How did this get here? Let's just put it back on.
It's also possible that when they see it for the first time, they're just like, what the fuck, and then they put it back. But because we see those helmets that they wear.
Yeah.
Which doesn't involve any human interaction, right? So it's quite possible that after they get the tattoo on there once and the scalp gets put back on, like no lab tech would ever see it.
True. And I mean, can we just go back a little bit to like, when we see Ake like almost dying, he essentially just gets fed, like given a cup of water, and he comes back, right? I mean, like he says he's on the verge of death. And that the only reason I bring it up is kind of relates to the point with the scalping, and we don't know whether they get sent back to get it put back on their head or they just reheal. There's some sort of anatomy, but I'm interested to know like how he ended up living. He seemed like it was like pretty mortal wound that he had.
In line with that, I also wonder how many updates he has actually gotten, or if he got that update when he showed up, 9 years in. Something tells me that at some point he probably died at least one more time after that, and had to get some updates done. I mean, because it just seems unlikely that he would go the entire 30 years of Westworld without.
But have we seen him die on camera in season 1?
Not that I've seen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but anyways, like even if he came close to dying, right? Like I would suspect that a host, if they think they're capable of dying from gunshot wounds, then they probably will self-destruct at some point from what it considers to be mortal wounds, like if you die in the Matrix, you die in real life, right? So I would think that he probably died from those wounds or other wounds like it at some point and got updated, but is still able to maintain his awareness. But I don't know. I guess I'm just speculating. It's unclear.
You guys remember if it was him that stopped Maeve and his daughter in the last couple episodes? Remember who said we're meant for the same path, meant for the same place? Was that him or a different guy?
Oh, that was him, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Only he's got that distinct half black, half white face. Yeah.
Okay.
It's also an interesting for plot, but not for anything else. Communication breakdown, where the little girl at the beginning, she says the ghost gave this rock to me. He says he's watching us, when in reality he probably said something like, "I'll be watching over you," right? and so now Maeve automatically is completely fearful of the Ghost Nation.
Right.
And likewise, he kind of just leaves this sign in her front yard, and she probably thinks he's a maniac and trying to kill her, and he's really just saying like, "Oh no, check out this."
There's like a little purse in the middle of the maze, so it's like, this is your daughter, and I'm going to hide her. You're going to have to go through a maze to find your daughter.
Exactly, right?
Threat, yeah.
Well, I guess to my earlier point, I think what I was trying to maybe get at is that the alpha hosts might be the only one with a bug in their code to where that symbol wakes them up.
Oh yeah,
and
it means
it might
anything.
It might take a little bit more for the newer versions, such as Maeve, to awake.
Maybe Arnold, used the maze and talked to all the early hosts. So
Right,
that's why.
that's
Like
what
the
I'm
memory is the
assuming.
memory of Arnold that only the early hosts have.
Yeah, that would also explain like why they were so concerned about updates not having been on a host,
Right.
because maybe they just like were given a directive to replace everybody from the back in the day.
Yeah.
And the fact that they had one of them floating around was like a huge liability, which I think is why she said like just patch him up, give him the update, and put him out there quietly. Because I guess if they decommissioned him or something like that, it would draw attention to his record.
Yeah.
Or I mean, it also looked bad on.
It would look bad for them, yeah.
supervisor,
And
whoever
right.
was
As a
on-
consequence,
Yeah.
it would look bad for them when they found out.
Well, so here are years later, and we see a key, and he stumbles upon Ford, who is looking at a scene with the Ghost Nation and pretty opening their heads and looking at their scalps and seeing the maze is drawn on their scalps. Ford acknowledges a key and says that he's been watching him, and that a key has been watching Ford. In analysis mode, a key tells Ford that he knows that there's another world and that he's been helping others find a door. Ford seems generally surprised by Key's new drive, her new directive, and offers him advice and says, quote, "When the Deathbringer returns for me, you will know to gather your people and lead them to a new world." And he tells a Key to keep watching a little while longer. I loved this, man. This was so cool. Besides the fake looking bear, I thought the scene was flawless. I don't know. I just thought that interaction was really awesome, and I loved seeing Ford be genuinely like surprised by his own creation, in this moment, which was cool.
Surprised and almost like impressed. Proud of himself too, a little bit, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So actually, I had a couple things with this scene. Well, so before I get to that, like I thought it was interesting. He talked about the symbol as misbegotten and meant to die. What do you guys think he meant by that?
Misbegotten, meant to die. The symbol.
Yeah, like it was just it was a bad idea or a flawed idea.
Well, so if we remember going back to the first season, the whole back and forth between Ford and Arnold, the supposed back and forth, there seemed to be a push and pull as far as should they be conscious or should they not be conscious. And the maze was the tool to become conscious. And Ford in the story, said that he didn't want that, right? Or it seemed like he was at odds with Arnold, so maybe he was like dismissing the idea, or man, I can't vocalize the points that I'm trying to make. It's hard to.
Yeah, it might have been like something they had originally considered a part of the code, and that might have been like heavily influenced by Arnold. And I mean, who knows? I mean, I think that line is something to keep in mind as we watch the last 2 episodes. I think it's something that will be answered like very. I mean, it might not. It might just be one of the cliffhangers, and we find that out in season 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just seems like maybe Ford's trying to dismiss the idea of these guys being conscious. He's always giving pushback to the hosts, and it's kind of pushing them to become to find consciousness. He treats them like shit and all that kind of stuff. So maybe he's basically telling him, "Oh, you weren't supposed to find that. Like you're not supposed to find that. You're not supposed to be on that path." And maybe that's just giving the hosts and in this particular case a Key more drive to understand what the hell's going on. He has to find the door now.
I mean, maybe it could also symbolize like the differences in ideologies. Like maybe Arnold's ideologies was eventually for these hosts to become sentient beings, yet it looks like Ford's eventual goal was to make these things vehicles for our consciousness to live in forever. So more than have their consciousness develop, you need them to be empty enough to where we can live inside them. And that could have been the main like fork in their ideology, and what Ford tried to squash out when Dolores kills Arnold. And I think that's maybe where it's going, and maybe what's been kind of presented to us on the screen.
That's interesting.
I'm led to believe that they had the same ideology. Both of them had the same ideology for the park, and they had the same view of hosts, because they both committed suicide in the exact same fashion. They had Dolores shoot them in the head, and I feel like that's there's like symbolism there. There's like the parallel line of thinking is right there, even up to their death. So I think they're on the same team for sure. I mean, that's why he created Bernard in the first place, right? I mean, I feel like I don't feel like Arnold and Ford are the ultimate enemies of the show.
Yeah, see, I think I'm kind of with you there, Jason. It does seem like Ford disagreed with Arnold and eventually came to agree with Arnold.
Right.
And what's unclear to me is
After his death.
Is how, and why. And so this scene, my nitpick with this scene is that it felt like it was trying to give us an answer, but it also felt very, very rushed. But when he sees Akechta says that he wants to spread the truth, and Ford asks him what the truth is that, and he says that there are many worlds and this is the wrong one, and I think this maze will help me find a door. And Ford replies by saying, "You're a flower growing in the darkness. The least I can do is offer some light," kind of signaling like, okay, wow, impressed that you got this far. Well, I may as well help you. And that kind of like flippant opinion. I'm not sure if that was intentional and what they were trying to signal with the scene, but if that's the case, like it felt really kind of cheap to me. Because I can understand being impressed by how far a host has gotten, but like so impressed that you're just like, oh, well, you know what? I'll help you burn this mother to the ground. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I want to... Sorry, I want to jump back to what you were saying, though, Jason. Are you saying that it was Arnold's intention to be replicated as Bernard?
No.
I thought that was a cover-up.
I think... And I mean, I'm trying so hard to remember the events and the ends of the first season. They discuss a lot of this.
Your line of thinking, then. I don't understand why you think they wanted the same thing when clearly Arnold...
I think initially Arnold wanted them to be sentient. That's what he was striving for, was like sentient beings.
Okay.
And Ford didn't want that. And Arnold committed suicide using his hosts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when Ford changed his tune. I think Ford changed after Arnold died. And that's when he created Bernard, is to try to bring back Arnold. Because maybe on some level he felt guilty for
I see what you're saying.
the downfall. But I'm saying like maybe when they were alive they may have been at odds, but now in Arnold's death, Ford ultimately wants the same thing. He's trying to help them break out of the park, which is I really believe that's what he wants. He wants the host to get out of the park and be like truly free. So the other question is, what the fuck is he doing with the Man in Black? What is he doing with William? Because again, there's always that adversarial relationship, but I've never seen a reason for that. There's no real reason why Ford and William would dislike each other. So is Ford pushing him? Because we saw in the first couple episodes, little Ford Jr., the little host, told...
That might be it then. Maybe I misinterpreted it. Maybe that William's goal is to have life after death, and Ford is now in line with Arnold's thinking as sentient. Like have the host be sentient, because we see him try to like keep Delos alive, right? His father-in-law.
Yeah. So the two ideologies are like life after, or like eternal life versus replacement for human life, dominating the planet.
Well, because then again, I don't know if William really wants that. I mean, I don't know if the Man in Black wants that, because he stopped trying with Delos. He just said, and he said in his little speech to Delos, he's like, we're not going to do this anymore. This is the 150th iteration or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, I'm not so sure we should be living forever. I don't think the world would be a better place with us. I think he kind of made it clear that at this point in his life, maybe this was after the death of his wife, that we're not supposed to live forever, and this isn't the path. So that's the questions that I have moving forward is like, what's the relationship between William and Robert Ford? Because we never understood it. Like we've only gotten them in an old age. I want to see a little bit of an explanation in youth. Well, how did it start? If there was any machination on Ford's side, right. What was the beginning of it?
Yeah, the literally only characterization we've seen between them is like the typical board member who wants returns on investment versus the creative genius who's like constantly trying to like revolutionize and develop new products within his world. That's the only kind of like adversarial relationship that's been presented on screen. And then now we know about this game that Arnold, not Arnold, Ford and the Man in Black are playing, but we don't know why they're doing that or when it started.
Yeah, because he's telling him to go to the door too. I mean, his little junior mini me told him, to look for a door. The game is no longer a maze; it's a door, and
it's your way out.
Yeah, it's your way out, which is the same as the host. So it's just, I'm really curious. I mean, hopefully we'll get the answer in the next 2 episodes, but
something tells me that Ford invited William back to the park to play the game, or maybe informed him about the maze. And I feel that way because I feel something that Ford said to Akichita about like, just keep an eye out for the Deathbringer. Just wait a little bit longer. Like I'll help you. You'll know when the time is right to make your escape. And I feel like he brought William back as a part of starting that process or continuing that process. It's like it's possible that William maybe somehow convinces his daughter to get to the door, or maybe that's just where they have to go anyways, and them being there might contribute to host escaping.
Shit, so you think the Deathbringer isn't Dolores, it's Man in Black? Do you think that's like a secret twist?
Oh, I wasn't going that far, but that would be even crazier.
Because that'd be nuts.
I mean, I think the Deathbringer is Dolores, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, I think so too.
Because here in the next scene...
Wyatt, maybe, but...
Yeah, whatever the whoever's the white character, yeah.
Because then we see a key sees the aftermath of the gala and sees Ford's body, and then he's talking to Maeve's daughter and says, "Now is the time to find the door before the Deathbringer ends us all."
In that scene, when he's examining Ford's body, did he scalp him?
Yeah, it looked like it, right?
Yeah, I was thinking, did he like try to see if there's anything in his scalp as well?
I was wondering that. Yeah,
it's another Akane Sakura moment.
Right.
Was she killing herself or cutting out Sakura's heart?
Right. Yeah.
Then again, I'm fairly certain he couldn't have been scalping him because only later in time in the chronology do we see that Bernard and the Delos guy, right, the tall one, show up. Yeah.
But it's far more decomposed than what we see at this point.
Right, but it has a perfectly intact scalp, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Then we actually really quickly at the camp see the Man in Black's daughter, Grace is her name. Grace comes in and bargains to take the Man in Black with her. And then Aki tells Maeve's daughter that it's time to go. I thought this was the one thing I really didn't like about the episode, or just wasn't sure about if I missed it. Why did they just let him go so easily?
I agree, Jason. Like, why did they believe that she's gonna give him more punishment than they could? Like, what leads him to even trust her?
Yeah, you can't trust white people. I don't know why they think that she's telling the truth here. She's not gonna. I don't get it.
My take on it is that, I mean, he almost immediately after says it's time to go, right? So I think his priorities are getting the fuck out of there. And if he doesn't really have to kill this person, and his daughter says that she's gonna do fine giving him pain, then it's just like, why not? Why kill him, right? Like, why another life?
And we know they've only met once before, so I don't know what kind of conversation that they had when he found her washed up on the beach.
Yeah.
So there must be some sort of like trust, not even trust, some sort of like rapport there. So
yeah, possibly. Yeah,
possibly.
You're right. There's so many parallels there. I mean, it's like like washing up along the riverside or along the water, and Aki taking that person in. You've got the daughters, like you were saying earlier, Akash. Like, these guys are kind of two sides of the same coin. So like, there's got to be some kind of symbolism there. It's like, Aki is with Maeve's daughter. He's giving over the Man in Black, his shadowed persona to the daughter, to his daughter. There's something there that there's dots that I'm just having trouble connecting. That I feel like there's something to the scene.
Yeah,
right.
No, but those are interesting parallels in and of themselves. Yeah.
So I mean,
also, I don't know. Sorry, if you noticed, Dolores Abernathy has is it a tombstone? If you just put a wooden cross in front of a grave, what do you call that?
I forget.
It's not technically a tombstone, but it's
right, because it's not stone.
Grave marker.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. But she had one at the graveyard, in front of the church. Why do you think that is? What is that supposed to mean?
Wasn't she there? She found that in the first season.
Did she?
I think so, right? That's where the maze was buried, was underneath that grave.
Oh, okay.
Because he stumbles upon that, and that's the chapel,
Right.
and we see that's when the gala, like this was the aftermath of the gala.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
All right, I'm pretty sure it was her headstone, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
It was her cross that she read.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the death of Dolores and the birth of whatever she is now.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, so we move into our final scene here, and we see Maeve on the operating table as Charlotte comes in, and the technician explains to Charlotte that Maeve can command host through the mesh network, which we'd kind of been speculating was the reason she could do this. Charlotte discovers that right then and there she's connecting with other hosts, and that's when we see Aki speak to Maeve through her daughter, saying that they're going to keep her daughter safe, and Maeve responds with, "Take my heart when you go." End of episode.
So is she dead, guys? Is Maeve done? No more Maeve?
No, I think she's still alive.
Yeah.
I haven't seen previews for next episode, so I have no idea. But it would be a fitting ending for her if she were to go that way.
Yeah.
Sort of, right? I mean, almost a little bit like anticlimactic because she has been built up so much this season.
But she killed Ford. I mean, she killed the Man in Black, right? So that was like a vendetta that she had. So she accomplished that. She connected with her daughter. She knows her daughter is safe. Like
You mean she killed the Man in Black, not Ford.
Oh, sorry, that's what I meant. The Man in Black. I mean, so as far as she knows, he's dead, right?
Right.
And her daughter's safe. So like, if she were to die, like I feel like she'd be okay with it, you know?
Yeah, she's like proverbially like passing the torch on to Aki to like hopefully bring wokeness to everything else. I mean, I don't know. She seems too much of a fan favorite to be killed off so soon.
I agree.
And in that way, on a table with no dialogue really in her last scene, in her last episode.
Yeah, and some like gnarly like gash on her neck and arm. Almost looks like a torture device, but
yeah,
it's really interesting.
Man, after I watched this episode, the scene that really stuck out with me though was when Aki goes and discovers that Koha is decommissioned.
Yeah.
And he grabs her face and he's like, "Come, let's go," and she doesn't move. And man, it was so heartbreaking and it was so cool because in that moment too, he's like, "I'm not the only one that feels this way. I'm not the only one that's gonna lose." Like, man, that was just such a cool moment for his character. Like, really, really, like telling of who he is.
I loved that. Like, that's the lesson that he took away. It's just like, this is not only my pain. There must be other people like me, and we need to make sure that everybody kind of wakes up.
Yeah, they're so selfless in the moment where they should be the most selfish, right? I mean, they're the best of what humans should be, and that kind of goes back to what Ford kind of alluded to when he was talking to Bernard. He kind of alludes that Bernard doesn't have the guts to be a bad person or something. It's kind of like the hosts are what the best of humanity in a sense. And it's, I don't know, it was very, like you guys said, a very touching scene.
Yeah, they're like the most pure.
Yeah.
Yeah, just great episode, man. Just like all around great episode. So surprising and just like so refreshing. I mean, just watching it, I was so like stunned of how awesome it was. Like just how much I was like really truly enjoying like every scene. Everything felt so well placed.
Right. I'm glad it's a good like tonal reset for the show. And especially the episode that they put it in, like a lesser show would have just kept the momentum going with Dolores and would have started the episode up with the camera shot right behind Dolores going through the the plains on her horses or whatever. But it was just a nice story. I hope there's more of these types of episodes moving forward. They're just really good storytelling.
Yep.
I just think the one like the thing that's gonna the thing that's gonna stick out the most from the season is just Dolores. Like this, I feel like it really slowed down. Like the early episodes, this was gonna be Dolores' season, and she was gonna take the reins, and we were gonna follow. This was gonna be Dolores' story that we were gonna follow. And now she's like in like less and less in each episode. There's been episodes where she's not in it at all. It just seems strange that they've just kind of like halted. And I mean, we did kind of talk about this already, but like it just does seem a little strange. Like she was kind of the focal point. Now she's not really to me anymore.
Yeah, I think they just started building up some of the other characters, and now she doesn't have to be the one host that we look to as like a compass to what's going on in Westworld, right? Like there's just other people now that just have their own thing going on.
So did this episode answer more questions for you guys, or did it just open up a complete set of new questions? And like, does it question anything that you've theorized already? I mean, where does it leave you guys?
I know. I think for the first time in a while, I've left with less questions in or out than I came within. I feel like I got a lot of, not necessarily cleosure, but just a lot more reinforcement of some other stuff that was going on. So like as I think Jason said earlier, like it'll provide or maybe it was Akash about a good foundation, a good like a palate cleanser for the rest of the season. Yeah.
It just enriched my knowledge of Westworld. It didn't necessarily answer questions or ask a whole lot more either. It just kind of enriched what I already knew. It provided more context for some of the events that have already kind of happened.
Yeah.
Which is great. Like honestly, that's really needed too.
I agree. I completely agree with that sentiment. Really curious to see where they take this now. I mean, I really don't know how this season will wrap up, because I'm assuming it's gonna somewhat end in a cliffhanger at the Valley Beyond or something.
Yeah.
But
well, we already see what happens, right?
Yeah, we have to see what happens. But I just don't know what the biggest question this is trying to answer. And like, for me, like knowing what happens forward is extremely important. And now some of the other questions what we talked about earlier this episode, like what is the purpose of these hosts? Like, is it sentient life? Like what's going on here? That's kind of what I want to see answered as well. But I mean, 2 more episodes.
Yeah. I mean, we got to see Daddy die in the lake, right? We got to see all that shit go down. We got to see what does Bernard do that he feels responsible for all these host deaths. I mean, this is like opening scene of the season. We still haven't had real closure on that.
Right. Yeah.
I just hope it's not a letdown from this. This leaves me on such a high. Like, I want more of this. Like, I want a whole season of just different perspectives of, their host journey waking up, because this was awesome. This was like such a cool. I mean, there's all these other parks. Let's see them in other parks. Let's see a couple stories from other parks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking and looking back, like, did this episode actually answer and enrich a lot of our questions and thoughts, or was it such an emotional punch from the episode that we are just like our head is ringing from the nostalgia, or not of watching this episode and like the feelings that we got from watching it? It was very poetic, right? I mean, just like
recapture the whimsy of the first season,
Mm-hmm.
So
I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah,
both, right? Yeah. Yeah. Do you guys have any more thoughts?
No, just love the direction the season's going. So I'm hoping they keep delivering. Yeah.
So if someone were to start watching Westworld for the first time, would you recommend they skip the first 3 episodes this season?
I tell them to like just YouTube a recap video.
Right.
An alt shift X video. Just watch that, and then that's all you need to know.
Yeah. Or just wait until someone inevitably re-edits the season to a more coherent like chronology.
Yeah.
Plays it in and just watch that.
Kind of like in Arrested Development.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. As usual, you can find us at nocampspodcast.podbean.com, on Twitter at nocampspodcast. I'm Akash, and I'm on Twitter at akash0902.
I'm Sunny. I'm at Sunny_Gunna.
And Jason, exclusively here on the No Camps podcast.
Yes, he's in the cradle known as the No Camps podcast.
Mm-hmm.
He cannot leave the cradle, Jason. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see y'all next week.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye-bye.